All right. Well, whatever. Roberto, Harvey, do me a favor, put your affiliate in next to your name.
What do you mean by affiliate?
If you're with a nonprofit, if you're public, whatever, if you're with an agency,
Oh,
uh, political office,
let's see. How do I do that?
you can go right up to your box to the right and rename,
Rename, right?
and then just put a comma back there and just what I'm doing. Hi, Stephen. How are you? Nice of you to join us.
Yep, absolutely. Nice to see you.
I have this set where people normally just come in and join the meeting, but we have these forums going on, so it affects all the settings. So we're putting them in a waiting room and waiting till we start. Hi, Ariel. Nice to see you.
Hey, good to see you. Thanks so much for having me.
Sure, thank you. Yeah, we'll just give it a couple minutes. We can start introducing ourselves too. Um, yeah. Um, so Harvey, you're architecture
Yes,
and design.
yes,
Are you
yes.
coming to our forum this evening?
No, I'm located in West Orange. I was there last Tuesday.
Oh, okay.
Um,
You can zoom in.
yes, well, I will do that.
Well, all right. Well, my name's John Mudd. I'm the chair of this meeting. We'll just start introducing until we get a little fuller here. Um, anyway, I'll pass it to Harvey.
Okay. Excuse me. I'm an architect, graduate of Cornell University with a bachelor's degree and a master's in urban design. Been in practice since 1978, private practice. From Boston. Well, I'm born in New York, born in Queens, then moved to Cambridge and worked in Boston initially and moved back here to the New York area in 10 years ago. And
Nice.
my practice involves affordable housing, always has renovation, new construction, a very diversified practice, urban planning, urban design, um, historic restoration,
Uh-huh.
you name it.
Sounds good. Sounds like we definitely need to connect, and that's exactly what we're talking about in the evening forum. Go ahead and pass it to someone. Um, I'll do it for you. Stephen, go ahead.
Hey, everybody. Good morning. Stephen King, Director of Quality Assurance and Data for Department of Homeless Services, Street Homeless Solutions. Street Homeless Solutions is a outreach unit within DHS. We try to find homeless individuals on the street where they are and place them into the shelter that, best fits their needs, whether that's a safe haven, stabilization bed, whether they have addiction issues, mental illness issues. And I've been here for about a year. I got the invitation by Tamara Felix, who I see just joined from CUCS. We work very closely together. Thank you.
Cool. Allison.
Everyone, I'm Allison Wilkie. I'm the Director of, Government Affairs and Strategic Campaigns with the Coalition for the Homeless. I just recently joined the Coalition for the Homeless. I was at Community Voices Heard before that and coordinating the Fair Chance for Housing campaign. So I'm glad to be here.
Cool. Yeah, we used to be a little closer with the Coalition for Homeless. Is Simone still there?
No, she's not.
And Giselle, is she still there?
No, we've
That's
just
why.
rebuilt the advocacy team. So.
Okay. That's why we've been missing them.
Exactly.
Okay. All right. So they moved on elsewhere. Okay. Sarana.
Good morning. I'm Serena Antoine from the Main Chance Drop-In Center. Nice to be here.
Okay. Thank you. Roberto. Yeah, just kind of put your little affiliate next to your name so everybody else knows who you are. No, okay. John Leva. Okay. Oh, there you go.
Hi. I'm sorry, I just got here a little late. So what are we doing exactly?
Just introduce yourself and where you're from.
Hi, my name is John Leva, and I represent a TA, Safe 63 Tiffany, where we have a LIHTC agreement expiring after 30 years, and they're trying to force us out. So we're trying to see how we can stay housed. And I also represent the Southwest Brooklyn Tenants Union.
Okay. Maybe you can explain that when we get to the public section of our agenda. Explain that a little bit more, see what we can do. And then Arielle, you're speaking soon. We can save you. I should have saved Stephen. And then Tamara, we all know Tamara. Well, maybe not all. Just say hello, Tamara.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Tamara Felix. I'm the Community Affairs Coordinator for the Manhattan Outreach Consortium.
Great. And then Jason and Hannah. Don't be shy.
Hi, my name is Hannah. So I am a new data analyst at the Department of Homeless Services, working with Stephen.
Okay, cool. And then we have a telephone number here. Hello. Okay, and Roberto or Jason. Okay. Okay, let me just pop up the agenda. I don't see Alex here. But anyway, we'll see. Let me get the agenda going. All right. Share. Alrighty. So all right. Well, welcome everybody. We appreciate any suggestions to help run this meeting proficiently. Please, in the future, please email me if you have something specific you want to speak to. We can always find room on our agenda. Now, the purpose here is we attend these meetings to share the knowledge and resources to identify the problems and find solutions to homelessness and housing crisis. We had no policy update. We aren't working on policy right now. So we've been skipping that meeting. Council highlights. Let me just give you a few highlights. The farm season is coming. We have a farm upstate. We have a farm in Midtown. We produce food and we share it with our shelters and our neighbors, and we've shared it with Main Chance, Encore, the Hell's Kitchen cupboard, and lots of other places too. We got a few more coming in. I'm going to skip a few and just speak about the Greater Good Forum. We have our last forum tonight. This is a series we've done. We started out with health before profits, and we did rent is too damn high, and we saving public housing, and tonight is about urbanizing for the public. And this is going to finish out the series. Basically, we kind of, the underlying problem is very clear with all these issues. And tonight's going to be very interesting. We're going to talk about urbanization in a different way. And we've got some really great people. Samuel Stein is going to moderate. And let's see, we're going to get right to, let me see how why don't we, Arielle, do you have any time restraints at all?
No, I'm here for the whole time.
Okay, good. I figure we can get Stephen talk about the numbers and so forth, and then we can spend as much time as you want for the rest of the meeting on your subject. Sound good?
Sounds great. Thanks.
All right. Stephen, last month we talked about the numbers. We talked with Tamara about how they increased and so forth. And I think you have come prepared with a few bullet points, right? No? Okay.
I didn't bring any data with me. I didn't really bring like a presentation or anything. I can speak a little bit to the numbers. I mean, I know in November, the population was up to about 88,000 shelter system, 53% increase since the migrant crisis. I'm the director of data here at Street Homeless Solutions. We do a lot of placements. So we work with, vacancies. We are constantly trying to juggle clients with vacancies in their preferred boroughs and et cetera. And, I can just say, looking at the data, the vacancies are less and less and less and less. And it's much more challenging to, if we meet somebody who says, well, I want to be in Brooklyn, it's hard to fit their preferred borough. And obviously everybody wants to be in a 1-bedroom apartment. And we there's just not a lot of space anymore compared to what there used to be before the migrant crisis. We're constantly trying to, any chance we get, we're trying to open new shelters, but as everybody here probably knows, there's a lot of pushback from communities. A square foot costs a lot of money. So yeah, the vacancies are being affected by the huge increase of people that are coming into the city. So yeah, I didn't bring a lot of data with me or anything. I wasn't short. I mean, next time I come, I can actually, come prepared with some numbers that have been published. I can't share any internal data, obviously.
Sure. So you said 53% up, and that's because of the migrants?
Yeah, that's in the latest mayor's management report. I just saw that the other day, and that's actually going to be published out there for the public. So that's why I can address it. Yeah, since the migrant crisis, I don't know exactly what date that is. I think that would be 2021 or 2022. I'm not sure exactly the data, but yeah, 53% increase in shelter census since the migrant crisis. That's what I've read in the report.
So I got a note here from Susan. She says we have over 64,400 migrants currently in our care as of February 29th, 2024. Over 179,800 asylum seekers have come through our intake system since spring of 2022. We have opened 217 sites. This is not the total number of asylum seekers in New York City. It does not include people who are staying with family, friends, and network here after being connected, meaning New York City, not mine. Okay. All right. So those ring true. That's what yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's definitely, I mean, from the data that I'm seeing, it definitely, we have an in-house joint command center, which is a 24/7, 365 operation. Tamara's organization, CUCS MOC, works very closely with us. So we are constantly 24/7 all week, every day of the year trying to place people from all of our outreach providers, from our in-house and outside outreach teams, and they are definitely finding it a lot harder than they used to actually fitting people in the vacancies. We get vacancy reports every day, and it's becoming much more of a scramble with the increased population.
Yeah. Now you have been like running about 50 to 60,000, give or take, over historically, I think, for the past several years. And that's the people who are sheltered. And now we're talking about additional, am I correct? We're talking about additional 64,400.
Yeah. When I first started in the government around 2016, and I remember all the way up through 2020 and even whatever. I always remember if it was always around 60,000. Obviously, 20,000 it dipped. 2020 it dipped quite a bit because we got a lot of people out of shelters and into hotels because of COVID. But yeah, the number, the baseline was always about 60,000. If it went under 60,000, I remember we always got an email kind of celebrating that, hey, the population went down to 55,000. So yeah, 55, 60,000 has always been about the baseline. The last couple years, anyways, decade, whatever.
Yeah. And we're not building housing. So,
Exactly.
we're cycling them in and out.
Yeah, the latest housing vacancy survey came out for 2023. I think they said the city vacancy was 1.4%, which is, anything under 5% is an emergency. That's insane. I've never seen it that low. So
yeah, we haven't built it. We got people landlords warehousing apartments, lots of empty spaces. Okay, so the vacancy is tight, and you've got this problem on your hands, and so we're cycling people in 30 days or 60 days in and out.
So the Office of Emergency Management really runs the whole migrant process. So I pick up what I can in our meetings. Obviously, our outreach team runs into migrants in the field and tries to. But we basically place them to the intake center. I think it's 30, but please don't quote me on that. I'm not 100% sure. It seems like it's kind of shifting, but the Office of Emergency Management actually runs that whole part of the system. So,
okay, here's where we know it doesn't do any good. We know it's destabilizes people when you're moving them around. We know it's probably to make, Susan says it's 30 for adults and 60 for families.
That sounds right.
Okay. Susan's so smart. So we know this is just wrong. And so he's doing it, I assume, he's doing it to make the processing look good, the numbers he's processing. And I assume he doesn't know what to do. I assume that he's just moving people through the system and without care, of course, because you just wouldn't do that. To what end, though? I mean, they have to go somewhere. They have to. Are they just all floating around? Are they going to the streets for a few days? Are they what's happening exactly?
I'm not 100% sure. I don't track any migrant data from our unit, but I can just talk about what I've read, really, and that's probably the same stuff that you guys have read. But yeah, I don't know. I would assume that you're seeing a lot of pushback in cities like Chicago and New York, obviously, for people that have been homeless and have been low income, and maybe they're upset that there's this new emergency, but the emergency wasn't there, a couple of years ago when they needed it. I'm just speculating. I'm not 100% sure. Like, we just don't track all the migrant data from my unit. So
yeah, how does it affect you though? Does it?
Well, like I said, vacancies. We meet New Yorkers that need shelter, in their preferred borough. We try to, if we meet a family or something, and they say, "Well, we're from Queens and we'd like to be in Queens because we have, roots there." We try to accommodate that, but it's getting harder and harder. Just less vacancies, less space.
Susan, are you on? You can always come off mute if you have some. You don't have to type it all in.
Yeah, thank you, Susan.
Let's have any
Good
questions.
information.
Anything else you want? I'm sure you have some other things on your mind.
Sorry, it's big in our community.
Yeah.
I just want to say, if you go to the Community Board 3 website, the Commissioner for Emergency Management did come to our board meeting to give us a status and update, which was very, very informative. So it's on our website. It's a streaming thing on our website.
Okay, cool. Okay. What else, Stephen? Where's is there things we can help with? Is there things that when we have like I have right now currently, I have someone who's been in a domestic violence shelter. The shelter was dysfunctional, to say the least. So, she went from the shelter into living with a man, and the relationship was sort of dysfunctional, and now she's needs to escape from there. Do you handle, well, I know you handle some domestic violence. I know there's Franklin. She's been there. What other avenues for first of all, domestic violence, and then do we tell us the process you'd like for us to do as public to help serve people that needs help?
So I left my email in the chat. Please send me an email, with details about this person. I can pass that directly on to our Joint Command Center team, and tell them, time is always of the essence, obviously, when it comes to domestic violence. But yeah, we can try to fit her into a good situation if we can. If we can't find something at the moment, we'll work with other domestic violence shelters for sure. So please, email me, and we'll try to get that person in the right situation, for sure. And if you in your area, in your catchment area, if there's an encampment, you can email me directly. I can get our Joint Command Center to send our in-house outreach team out there to offer services. And then after we offer services, we always, there's this misconception that we show up with the police and we sort of enforce, but we get there about 2 days before police or Department of Sanitation or anybody shows up to an encampment. So we would be there to offer shelter services and try to build trust with that person. And if you see somebody who's sort of bedding down in the same area, please email me. I can reach out to Tamara and some of our other outreach staff to try to get them services as well. I mean, we do engage some people quite a bit, and a lot of people keep saying no when we offer services, but it's all about building that trust. I mean, it really is. It takes time with some people. I mean, imagine, some strange people walking up to you and saying, "Hey, would you like to come to this strange building you've never been to?" With more strange people that you don't know. It takes time to build trust with these people. So the more that we can reach out, the more, outreach workers we can send and try to build that trust with, people from that specific area. And we do hire outreach workers that have been in the shelter system. So, we train our outreach workers very well. So I left my email there. Anything in your area, please email me. And we'll try to help as much as possible with our outreach team.
Cool. Susan?
Yeah, when you say outreach workers go there 2 days beforehand, which I'm really glad to hear about, do you mean MOC or do you mean DHS?
I mean DHS, our in-house Joint Command Center
So
team.
can I ask, these people already have relationships with MOC? Many of them are already on case management. Why wouldn't you have MOC, who's already going out several times a week, reach out to the same people? That's what used to happen years ago, is they would get notification and they would be able to go out, reach out to people many or most of them they already had experience with, and say, hey, this is going to be happening. This is, and try and use that as leverage because they already have relationships. Why would you, and generally a lot more experience in dealing with issues, whether they're social workers or other experience. So why would you have the DHS people go out instead of MOC people?
So this is a city policy, 311.
That's not a good reason.
Sorry, I'm almost done my sentence, please. Almost done my sentence. So 311 calls come directly to our Joint Command Center. We are equipped with nurses. We are equipped with, a lot of resources, and that's the way it goes through the city. 311 calls, somebody uses 311 to complain about an encampment, which a lot of business owners do, a lot of residents do. I understand that some people don't like encampment enforcement, but there are people that do appreciate it. 311 calls come directly to our Joint Command Center. So that's why.
Okay, so I think it's clear that response is because of complaints. It's not because of what's best for, and I know this is my opinion. It's not what's best for the people who are unhoused, who, like I say, already have relationships. MOC also responds to 311 complaints, they complain to need for service, respond to need for services, not for complaints about encampment. So I just want to put it didn't used to be city policy. It's now everything's all about the businesses, and that's what it's about. And like I say, that's just my opinion. Thank you.
Anyone else with questions? Stephen, so you've got a low vacancy rate. Are you? And I'm sure you're always telling the other, talking about this within your agency, and I'm sure it goes up to the mayor. Any actions being taken care of? Any serious besides renting out hotels?
We're opening shelters any chance we get. We're always looking for, I think there's a migrant shelter going up in over by Park Slope, which is gonna we're just constantly trying to get people where we can. Like I said, there's some community pushback of trying to open shelters. So especially if there's like a school in the area. So it's a delicate dance. So we're always performing. We are constantly trying to get more room. Constantly. That's something that DHS and the city is fierce about. Is always trying to work with community boards. Always trying to find. We work with a lot of these outreach providers like Breaking Ground that are amazing about sort of finding space. So we work very close with our outreach providers and our program providers, and we rely on their expertise. But we are constantly trying to find space. This is before the migrant issue. This was a huge issue, but even more so now.
Yeah.
So,
any seed money you're giving to people like to help open up shelters? Not that I'm big on opening up shelters, but housing is what we need. But like to faith groups or anything like that, seed money to.
We do work. Yeah, they're called respite beds. We do work with faith groups. I think a couple of years ago we kind of realized that the city kind of realized that these shelters with where you're demanding people come in for a curfew. That's not the best approach. So we've kind of moved towards safe haven, stabilization beds, where there's mental illness approach, there's addiction approaches. So we have sort of built-in care in those shelters. So I think that's what I've seen anyway since I've been here for about a year, is that's where concentration is going towards safe haven and stabilization beds, where we can really help people that have mental illness issues and addiction issues as well. But yeah, like I said, we're constantly always trying to find space, always.
Yeah. Before the COVID happened, we were working with some other nonprofits. We were working on policies for respite beds because we found people not having internet or phone services, or they had the curfew, what you were just talking about, and it really didn't help them, much. It felt that's why I think part of the reason why a lot of people didn't want to go into the congregated shelters, and there was a lot of other things too. Do you have a basic policy where you expect your like standard operating procedures?
I don't. I mean, I remember seeing in the media that the mayor sort of made a big announcement that the city was going to rely more on faith-based institutions, but I just don't know where that's gone. Honestly, we don't have any faith-based institution beds in our portfolio. We have about 40 safe haven stabilization shelters in our portfolio, and we don't have any specific religious respite beds. So I don't really have data on that. Really.
Yeah. Besides working, I'd like to get back to that, and I don't think things have changed, but I would love, like, maybe your agency to be involved in discussing these things. I don't know if that's a possibility, but if
I
you
could
can.
ask, but yeah, I could ask or at least try to get some information from one
Sure.
of our assistant commissioners.
Sure, I'll pull up the old policy and see if I can get some. Right now, I've got quite a few tasks ahead of me, so I'm not going to jump into that right away or anytime soon. Anybody else have questions for Stephen? Tamara, do you want to add anything?
I'm trying to get the placements for you, but right now my system is down. So once I get it, I'm going to just email
Okay.
you. If I can get it before the meeting end, then I'll just announce it as well.
Sure. Well, if there's no other questions, Stephen, do you want to add anything, or do you want to put anything on the agenda for next month, or
I could reach out to you. You know, you and I can sort of exchange some emails and we can figure that out. But yeah, next time I could definitely come with some bullet
we
points.
appreciate having you. Yeah.
Yeah, it's great to be here. Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, it's good to keep a finger on the pulse and see what's going on all the time. How about maybe I'm missing something in the chat here. Let me just take a quick look.
Oh, no.
Harvey's got some. Harvey, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was thinking about looking into, I know it's on an individual basis, but B&B units or accessory dwellings, or even empty nesters who are willing to open up a portion of their home. And the logistics of, pulling this together are difficult, but if the individuals, can agree one-on-one that it works, there are dozens of empty nesters around with 2-3 bedrooms and extra bathroom, and there could be thousands of those around.
Yeah, I haven't seen specific city policy about that. I know they've been trying to allow basement apartments. There are a lot of people that have basements that, they could, fix them up to be an actual apartment and rent them out. And, we could get people in there through city FEPs and different vouchers and Section 8 and whatnot. But that's always kind of a struggle. For some reason, they have to sort of change the rezoning laws, and that's been on the books, and it's been something that the city's been trying for quite a while now. So, but I haven't seen sort of a real charge with that yet. I haven't seen official policy about it yet.
No, I've had many clients contact me who have basement units who they want to bring into code. And there are a lot of them out there. It's very prevalent.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
some of them occupy illegally now. And they're worried about that. They want that. My response to them is, well, if it's illegal, you're illegal. You're on the hook. If something goes wrong, you're going to get fined or worse. Someone will get hurt. So they're desperately trying to bring these into code. Obviously, they rent them and they make money. And if they're not legal, they have problems. But there are a lot of them, a tremendous number in Brooklyn, Queens, Staten Island. I've been all over. And they just, they're hesitant to spend the money. Some of them can be interesting cases. I found one that was totally renovated by some architect owner and totally violated half the code restrictions. No windows in bedrooms and so on. And I tell them, you think you have a 2-bedroom here, you've got a studio. It's not a 2-bedroom because you don't have light and air. So there needs to be some way to contact these people and let them know there's a program for this and fill these units legally. And there are many of them. And a lot of them, are half above grade. They have good windows and lights, and they have egress front and back. And they're just they don't know what to do. And for an architect to do one-on-one, it's not very efficient. But the owners don't feel they have the money. They don't know they're not sure they're going to get it approved. So they're worried, will this get approved? And if
Yeah,
they have a tenant knocking on the door with money, I'm sure they would move forward.
Yeah, that's definitely more of an HPD issue, but just going by what I've read and what I've heard around the city. But yeah, I think once that policy, they've been trying for years to really make it very official, and bring in some city funding for these people that you say that need to get their basement up to code. And once that happens, then they can, I think, start using city vouchers like city FEPs to actually get people into these spaces. So I'm not 100% sure where that stands now. I guess there's more of an HPD production development issue. So, but hopefully soon. I hope comes into play.
Cool. Anybody else go? Oh, I see John. John, go ahead, John.
Something Harvey said just came to mind that I've thought of for a while now. As far as the migrant, right, with this migrant situation and getting them somewhere, there's a program, I forgot the name of it, right, that it pairs senior citizens with somebody, right, to live with them or whatever. And I've thought, like, people that would renting out with Airbnb that are now it's illegal because, the laws changed or whatever, but still have the need and still have the space, I guess, to rent out or whatever. That would be a good way. It may be a hard sell, but some people might go for it, and everybody counts, I guess, right? To just, subsidize, give them some money to let them stay in their house the way they would let any other Airbnb person stay in their house. I don't know. It might be a crazy radical thought, but just something that came to mind.
Yeah, I don't know. That's, like I said, that's the Office of Emergency Management that really deals with all the migrant spaces. So I'm not sure what they have, in the oven right now. But yeah, I know Airbnb's they've been locking down tight on Airbnb. Yeah, so I'm not really sure if that's part of their policy, upcoming policies.
Because it seems to me if there's that space there that was available before and it's still available somewhere, somebody could be using that space.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the whole Airbnb thing, they were taking a lot of apartments off the market, and that's the real issue. They were making lots of money in illegal hotels.
No. I'm not advocating for Airbnb. No, that's not it. I'm just saying that if those people still have the need to supplement their income or something, the people that were just doing it in their home.
Right,
like I have a neighbor here that just during COVID, she couldn't work. So she, gave up an extra room or whatever. And, and the room is there now and she can't do it now because of the law, but the room is there and somebody else could be in that room.
It's like a roommate that basically helps supplement.
Exactly. And they do it with older people now. There's some kind of senior program. I forgot the name of it, where they pair a senior with somebody younger, and supposedly it's been working out great because they complement each other.
It makes some logical sense. I mean, people take on roommates and then they stop doing it. They start doing the Airbnb, and that makes some logical sense. Allison, anything to add? I know you're in the business of bringing service to people, and you guys do some great work.
Yeah, second day on the job. So definitely in the future, I will have more to add, but still getting a handle on all the services that we have.
Okay. All right. And I guess you got how'd you get our notice? Did I send it directly to you or
no, Dave, the executive director of the coalition is on the list and forwarded it to me, but I'll send you an email, John, so that you can put me on moving forward and you have my email address.
Sounds great. Yeah. Okay. So if there's no one else, we're going to move on because we've got a nice, anyone else? Last words on this issue. Stephen, thank you again. And it was very good to have you here. So housing development alternative. Actually, Arielle and we're looking, you're going to speak to the TOPA, and I'll let you set the agenda. How's that, Arielle?
That sounds good. Yeah, and maybe we can do a quick introduction and get things started. I'm happy to do a quick intro and then I'll pass it to Elise, who's here too. Hi, everybody. I'm Arielle Hersh. I'm the Director of Policy and New Projects at UHAB. We work primarily with limited equity cooperatives, with HDFC co-ops all across the city, but also do policy work and some tenant organizing, specifically in East Brooklyn. And for the last couple of years, I've been working with Elise and partners at Housing Justice for All, the statewide housing coalition, and Nicely, New York City, to coordinate the TOPA campaign. And we'll talk about TOPA in just a second, so no spoilers. Although I don't think it's a spoiler for most folks in this group. All right, I'll pass it to Elise.
Hey everyone, good morning. My name is Elise. Nice to see many of you again. I use she, her, they pronouns, and I work at New Economy Project, which is a citywide organization that's fighting for a just economy that works for all New Yorkers based on racial and economic justice. And so through that work, my job is the Community Land Trust campaign organizer, and I help to coordinate the coalition of 20 plus community land trusts across the city. And CLTs are part of the leading groups that are working to fight to pass COPA in New York City and TOPA in New York State. So yeah, happy to be in this conversation with you all this morning. Should we just kind of launch into our presentation?
Sure. Did you want, you had some slides, right?
Yeah, I can share my screen if that's okay. It looks like it should be okay for me to screen share. So just a preview for everybody. We'll do a quick presentation, which I don't think should take more than like 20-ish minutes, and then hopefully we'll have some time for like Q&A and to talk a little bit about what's in there. I think a lot of folks might be familiar with the policy already, and so I'm excited to hear from you all, and especially from folks who work more on the homelessness side, which is, you know, this is really a preservation program, to think about sort of ways that there are overlaps and questions about the policy. So I will share my screen. Great. Can everybody see this okay? Cool.
Yep.
So Elise and I are going to talk a little bit today about TOPA and COPA policies. TOPA is the tenant opportunity to purchase, and COPA is the community opportunity to purchase in New York. And this is a photo of our rally that we had earlier this month that I think a couple of folks in this room might have been at, which is great. So under our sort of current system, just a couple questions for folks to sort of think about in terms of, you know, the ownership of land and housing, who owns our homes, who makes decisions about our homes, about the rent, about the maintenance, about whether a building is bought and sold, and how this system impacts us and our communities. Any initial reactions to that? I think we've got some time for like a little, if folks want to just come off mute and shout it out.
No, this just reminds me of something I saw on jacobin.com or Jacobin. I'll bring it up later, but it's pretty much identical.
Well, it certainly makes us poor. It makes us poor and makes us rent burden, and we get affected by being forced out of our homes. Anybody else?
I mean, I don't know if this is the right time to say this, but like we're personally at Safe 60 Tiffany so affected by this, because in 2009 we had a new landlord that bought the building, and he bought the building for 5.3, 70 units. It came out to like $75,000 a unit. We could have bought it had we known, but we were never given the opportunity. It was sold out from under us 1 month. We was just told, send your invoice to this new place, and that's it. And if we would have had the opportunity, we would have known it, and this law would have been in effect, we wouldn't be now, you know, being in the brink of eviction or, you know, displacement, whatever pretty word they want to use to say, out on the street and homeless. You know, so this is really, 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 if it would have had it then, we wouldn't be in this situation, and hopefully we can get it now so other folks don't have to go through this, because as they keep talking about bill, 421A, LIHTC agreements, most of these have sunsets. Most of these, have doomsdays, and that's the part that people don't talk about. They kick the can down the road, and that day is gonna get here. It got here for me. Luckily, we got extended, and I got 30 years out of it. But either way, now I'm priced out of New York City if I got to leave here. Like, where am I going now? So
Yeah.
this is very, very, very important. And I don't know if this was the right time to talk about that, but
No, John, I think that was perfect. And honestly, you should do this presentation. Because that's exactly it. That's 100% down the line, that under our current system, landlords own our homes for the most part. And so we don't actually have the power to make decisions over our homes, over how much the rent is, how much the maintenance is, how good the quality of the maintenance is, who makes repairs and when, whether they're licensed contractors or just, someone that the landlord finds. And, like John was mentioning about whether a building is bought or sold, I think a lot of folks, especially as the city is gentrified rapidly, have had the experience of having their building sold to another owner, and just, in a blink of an eye, you can miss it and folks get a notice and it says, okay, now you have to pay your rent somewhere else. And that time at which a building is sold is a huge moment where tenants could have power to bargain, to, fight for what they want. And, we'll talk about this in the context of TOPA and COPA, the ability to actually, step into ownership or, really take control over their homes. And I think that, John, also, that's a huge, you hit on all of the points about, the systemic impacts of this all the way down the line. What happens if, a new owner takes over and raises my rent, or an agreement that my building has expires and suddenly the rent goes up to an unaffordable amount that I can't pay anymore. And so I have to leave. There's nowhere else in the city that I can stay at an affordable place. So either, folks are headed to the shelter system or they're headed out of New York City overall. We know that we're losing, especially Black and brown folks, longtime New Yorkers in gentrifying neighborhoods. And, we're just bleeding folks. And so, there are huge systemic impacts of the current system as it is. And I know that a lot of folks here are engaged in work and fighting for their homes, just to preserve, what little control we do have. So I love this this graphic, which I think is something that Nicely worked on in the very early days of their founding, but sort of has this great visual about sort of what is it that we want our communities to look like, and has a little, visual representation of our current system. And, there's this push and pull here in terms of who wants control over our homes and who gets it. And right now, our system is such that Wall Street and real estate have the big bucks and the big money and the power and the influence, and are able to wrest control over our homes using that. And tenants have a lot of ways to fight back and to say, no, this is our home, and we won't give it up. But we don't have nearly as many powers and sort of tools as we could. And certainly a big barrier in this is money. And so we'll talk about that a little bit. But I think that this also is a great diagram in sort of displaying what sort of a future world could look like if tenants had control over their homes. What would we do if we could own our homes and steward the land, not necessarily in a private, personal property sort of ownership way, but, to have control over who makes decisions about our homes and our neighborhoods, to be able to support each other, and to really sort of build our neighborhoods up in the place that they are and preserve longtime residents. So I love this graphic. I'm glad this is in here. So the two policies that we're going to talk about a little bit today are the Community Opportunity to Purchase Act, or COPA, which is a local policy that is currently working its way through the New York City Council. And then there's a corollary legislation, the Tenant Opportunity to Purchase Act, or TOPA, in New York State. The sort of key difference there is sort of who gets the right. And so for the Community Opportunity to Purchase, that right is really awarded to community institutions, to nonprofit housing owners, and to community land trusts that would sort of permanently steward the land. And in the state legislation, the Tenant Opportunity to Purchase Act is just that. The right is a very direct right for tenants to pretty directly claim ownership or to be able to take control of their buildings. Although, just to say that I think it's likely that in either scenario, tenants will work with a qualified sort of sponsor organization, which is likely to be a nonprofit housing organization or a community land trust, perhaps a land bank for some upstate groups to be able to take control of their homes and really effectively use these policies. And so COPA and TOPA give these groups the first opportunity to purchase their buildings when they go up for sale. And so, there's sort of this process in which, and we'll go through that. I think we've got a slide that has sort of like the full steps, which gets a little bit wonky, but effectively it says that landlords both have to provide notice to tenants whenever they are about to sell their building. And also that notice period sort of like starts a clock in which tenants have the ability to respond and say, hey, what do we want out of our housing and what do we want out of our homes? Do we want to use this as a place to bargain for better conditions? Do we want to work with a nonprofit housing owner or a community land trust to, make sure that the building isn't just sold to any landlord, but is sold to a better owner who has our best interests at heart? Or, do tenants want to take control over their homes themselves and own them collectively as a limited equity cooperative, or, lots of different permutations that are out there. And so I think the important thing that we really want to emphasize is that this is enshrined in law as a right, and it creates, a larger body of tenant organizing, and effectively is like a de facto right to organize around the sale process when buildings go up for sale, and can be used in the same way that organizers use, HP proceedings or a 7A case or a rent strike as sort of one of many tools to sort of build leverage and tenant power and allow tenants to exert more control over the future of their homes. And I think that, yes, this little addendum is helpful that, in being one of many tools in the toolbox, all of these things can be sort of combined and overlapped to create a really powerful organizing strategy that allows tenants to really see the outcomes that they want in their homes. And so TOPA and COPA policies build tenant power in a couple different key ways. The first is that it increases the cost of flipping buildings and really acts as sort of a deterrence against speculation and flipping, especially of multifamily rental properties. And the increase in cost is really an increase in time. But of course, in real estate, time is money. And so in stretching out in some ways the sale process and making it so that an owner can immediately sort of speculatively flip a property over and over and over again in this sort of constant churn, it slows down that process. It sort of cools the market slightly and allows this sort of entry point for tenants into that process. And of course, it gives local communities this opportunity to intervene in basically every building sale, especially where tenants are organized. And so we really see this as a right for tenants and also for a place that sort of amplifies existing building organizing and existing tenant organizing, creates perhaps a new goal, a new demand for tenants to work towards. It also increases the amount of housing overall that is run for people and not for profit by expanding this sort of broader category of, I think, what folks are calling social housing, including nonprofit-owned rental housing, including limited equity cooperatives like HDFC cooperatives and Mitchell-Lama, and by including the stock of community land trusts overall, which of course sort of are sort of combinable with many of these different entities, but because the community land trust holds the land in trust in perpetuity, so it can't be bought or sold on the speculative market. And you could have a community land trust with an HDFC co-op, you could have a community land trust with a rental, you could have a community land trust with a single family home. So all of these things can sort of be combined together, and that unifying factor between them is that they are permanently and deeply affordable, and they have deep ties to resident control, which means that they can't be bought and sold on the speculative market, and that both the residents that live in those buildings and often the broader community, especially in the case of community land trusts, has much more say in what happens in those buildings and their long-term purpose. So, Elise, is this where I'm passing? I'm going to pass it over.
Sure. Hey, everyone. So we've seen COPA and TOPA type policies be really, really successful around the country. So for example, TOPA has existed in DC since the early 80s. In San Francisco, they passed COPA in, I think, 2019. And we've seen such amazing success from these policies. So we know that it's proven to be effective. So in DC, there's been, I think it's like 16,000 units of permanently affordable housing has been preserved over the course of maybe like 10 years or something. So that's over 1,000 units a year. We've seen tenants be able to really take control over their building's future. We've seen many examples of tenants, even since 2019 in San Francisco's COPA. Lots of tenant associations have successfully organized, partnered with community land trusts, and taking control of their building. And yeah, I mean, all of these units have been effectively removed from speculation and puts people over profit, which is just, our ultimate goal. And so this is like a national movement of passing these types of COPA and TOPA policies. And yeah, we know that here in New York, it could also be a really powerful tool.
It's like a race, right? I mean, they're buying up so much right now. How do we get in on that race? How do we?
Exactly. It's a race, and these policies sort of slow that down to allow community groups and tenants to actually be a part of the race.
Mm-hmm.
So COPA again is a little bit different, but to just focus on one bill to start, the statewide TOPA bill. So there are 5 steps. You could kind of even argue that there are more steps, but just to simplify it. As Arielle said, TOPA sort of works in sort of like a countdown, right? So a landlord, once a landlord decides that they want to sell a building, before taking it to the open market, as they do now, they first have to give tenants a notice of intent to sell. And they have to give it to each of the tenants. And the tenants, depending on the size of the building, will have a certain amount of time to respond. So if it's a smaller building, you have less time. If it's a bigger building, you have more time. And that's really an exciting moment to me as a tenant organizer. Like, this is a moment where tenants receive this notice and are really encouraged to come together to meet as a collective and think about, what do we want to do as a tenant body? Do we want to respond to this? And it's really an exciting organizing moment. So let's say tenants decide, yes, we want to move forward. They submit a statement of interest, and 50% of the tenants living in a building must sign on. So once they do that, tenants will then have a period of time to put together an offer. And again, that depends on the size of a building. At any point in the process, but especially this point, we anticipate that tenants would really be reaching out to community groups, to partners to support with that sale, or to putting together kind of like the financing package and how that would work. We also hope and are fighting for funding from the state and the city to support tenants and community groups having funding available to make this, really feasible. So the tenants or community group would submit their offer, and the owner, we live in a capitalist society where we're not able to take away property rights from landlords. So landlords can decide, they can accept or they can reject the offer. This bill does not force a landlord to take $1 less than they want to accept. So let's say if the owner accepts the offer, amazing, tenants work to secure financing and move the sale through. If the owner rejects the offer, they can then take that offer to the open market. But we also have a right of first refusal in this bill. So before a owner finalizes a sale with a third party, other landlord, they need to take the terms of that final deal back to the tenants or community group that made that offer, the initial offer. And if the tenants or community group can match the price and terms of the final sale, then they would be the ones to receive the building. So that's the process. I'll also just add really quickly is that in the bill, tenants can also assign their rights. So even at step number 2, tenants can decide, you know what, we do want to see our building taken off of the speculative market. We want to stay in our homes, but we don't want to be the group that's really doing this negotiating and, securing financing. We want to work with, X trusted community group or community land trust in our neighborhood. We want them to go through this process. And so tenants can actually assign their rights to nonprofits or community land trusts that are qualified to have that first right to make an offer. John, did you want to add something?
What's preventing the bidding war to happen? Is it just it goes back to them and that's it? It's by law the new bid comes in, it goes back to the community or the tenants, and the tenants say, yeah, we can do that or we can't, and it's done. They have to accept it, or is there? Can he create a bidding war?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think that at that point it's pretty done, although I guess I'm not sure. I mean, there still is, I guess, a possibility of a bidding war if tenants match it. I guess that third party could. I'm not sure. Arielle, do you have a thought on that?
I am also not 100% sure. I think there have been a couple different permutations of this in DC. The DC law is written slightly differently around that provision. And so, theoretically, I think that this would stop after sort of the first process that say, the tenants make an offer, the landlord says, no, I'd like more money. He goes to the private market and gets a third party, and that last right when he has to sort of bring it back to the tenants and say, this is the final offer, take it or leave it. If the tenants can match, that should be sort of like the end of that. It's, not intended to be something that encourages a bidding war, although I am sure that there are a lot of different permutations in the way that sale process goes. Obviously, these are very complex negotiations, and so it's possible. I think that, there's some of this that we would have to see how, some of those very like minutia specifics sort of play out to understand them better. Although there's a lot to learn from what's happened in DC, and happy to, send some resources if folks are interested.
Yeah, and we know they have lots of money, developers and so forth, particularly if they have any air rights they can latch onto. And so they're overpaying for some of these buildings, I imagine, because they're planning on building. What happens in that circumstances? Are the tenants looking at that and says, "Oh, we can build up too"? But then in New York City, the tenants can only build up so far. I think it's 12 stories, and the businesses can go up a little higher.
Yeah, so we've actually seen this play out in DC in interesting ways where, because tenants can assign their rights, sometimes they do assign their rights in DC to a developer, and in DC they're allowed to assign their rights to a private developer. That's not true in the proposed New York State law. But what we've seen sometimes happen in DC, that tenants will say, hey, the conditions of our building are such that, we don't think it's worth preserving. We don't want to keep our building. We would prefer to assign our rights to a developer to maintain, deep affordability in our units long-term, and allow a developer to build a larger building with more units that can bring, more homes into our community, into our neighborhood. And, tenants have a right to have one of those units with stabilization protections often. And so, that's definitely an outcome that's possible. And I think that the key difference here is that rather than tenants making sort of a separate deal with a developer, tenants are the ones in the driver's seat here. And so tenants have a lot more control over the terms of that sale, over the terms of that agreement with a potential developer or owner, to decide what that looks like and to really sort of be the ones driving that process where, these things are always possible technically. But this sort of like brings tenants into that process.
Yeah, no, I like it. I like what you're telling us about this. I've always kind of looked at some of these things and CLTs. I've been wanting to get people to talk about this for a while. There's up in Harlem and up in I think it was Pennsylvania. They were doing some work. I think it's terrific. Social housing. I'm sorry, I'm probably interrupting your slideshow. Go right ahead. I can get to my question later.
Great. Arielle, you want to go to the next slide? So, as we think about COPA and TOPA, these are still just policy proposals here in New York, and we want to make sure that as we begin to get more momentum and might need to negotiate with legislators to actually pass these bills, there's certain pieces that we want to make sure really remain in the bill and we feel are fundamental to these policies. So the first one on the state side, we want to make sure that TOPA is going to really be a right for tenants. We want to expand tenants' rights so that we want tenants to have the right to come together and insert themselves into the sales process. We don't want to see, a pilot program or TOPA only being applicable to very specific types of tenants or buildings. We want this to be a real expansion of tenants' rights. We also want as many buildings as possible to be eligible. Right now, TOPA is eligible for most private buildings, as well as single family homes that are owned by LLCs. So if you're a renter in a home in upstate New York and your landlord is selling your home, you know, your corporate landlord, we want that family who's living in that home to have the first right. We don't want that to be cut out, for example. In COPA, the local city policy, right now it applies to any residential property with 3 units or more. And we're also trying to push for it to include vacant property that's zoned for 3 units or more. We also know that the timeline is really important. Tenants aren't going to be able to come together, organize, decide they want to buy their building, get financing in a matter of weeks, right? Or days. We need a timeline that actually is going to allow for tenants to go through the process and actually make this feasible for tenants and for community groups. And then we need funding, right? And we need access to funding. So we, as I mentioned before, we're fighting for funding on the state side and the city side. So we'll share information about how you all can support the call for funding. But we're fighting for $250 million every year of funding for TOPA acquisitions and technical assistance in the state. So we can share a memo and invite you all to sign on if you're interested in pushing for that. And then on the city side, there are programs that already exist in the city that if they were adequately funded, they could also support COPA deals. So there's a program called Neighborhood Pillars in the city that supports nonprofits and community land trusts acquire property to keep those properties permanently affordable. But that program is essentially defunded and non-existent right now. We want the city to fund that program so that, you know, let's pass COPA and pass the resources needed to actually support groups to acquire that property. You want to go to the next slide? So yeah, so perfect, join us. So this coming Monday on March 11th at 11 a.m., we are fighting, we're going to join the Comptroller's Office and the Progressive Caucus and many coalition partners to call for $2 billion to fund Neighborhood Pillars, that program, as well as Open Doors. So another program which could allow for new construction of housing that could be community controlled, tenant controlled, and permanently affordable. So we want to see these programs funded. We also are asking that please meet with elected officials, urge them to pass these bills, you know, go to your community boards, ask them to pass resolutions in support of these bills. Join us. So on the city side, fighting for COPA, we are fighting for COPA as part of a group of bills that we call the Community Land Act that support community land trusts and taking land and housing off of the speculative market. So I'll share a link. Please endorse it and join our coalition. And join us in our fight for TOPA. So we and Nicely with Housing Justice for All are fighting to pass this. We'll share a link and you can sign up to add your name, calling for the passage of TOPA, funding for TOPA, and it will also add you to our group if you'd like to be a part of that campaign. So I think that's all for our presentation, but we can open it up for questions.
May I have the first question?
Sure.
So back to slide 8, point 2 said that there was a 45-day window, and I was just wondering, what if one tenant or a few tenants are unable to be reached within the 45 days? Is there a presumption of what those tenants' intentions are since they missed the window?
Yeah, I can jump in here. I think that most of the COPA and TOPA legislation don't require a 100% sign-on from every single tenant in a building. Obviously, it is really, really difficult to have 100% participation in any sort of tenant association. And so my understanding is that this uses sort of like a benchmark or a threshold of sort of majority or plurality support to be able to move forward. Elise, do you know if there are specific thresholds that are in the legislation? I'm not sure that there are. I think that that might be something that is included in sort of like the rollout and in the sort of administration designation. What we usually see for groups of tenants that want to petition to become an HDFC co-op or to go through one of these processes is that they need to hit at least majority support, and often HPD on the local level will mandate 80% tenant participation to move forward. I think the DC limits are a little bit more flexible than that. I think maybe they're like closer to a 2/3 majority. But yeah, something like quorum to move forward, but it doesn't need to be absolutely everybody in the building. Yeah, there are always going to be a couple people that are really hard to reach, and we know.
Thank you.
Anybody else? So you mentioned.
Can I add something?
Go ahead.
The timelines are very important because just this weekend, actually, like we're in negotiations right now, and let me just say, I slipped in some of the TOPA language into our MOU that we're dealing with, and that almost broke the deal. And it's blind blowing to me because it's not asking for any concessions or nothing. Just let us match the offer. That's all I put in. I didn't put in the whole language, right? So that 60 days, they wouldn't accept. We finally got it down to 30 days. But well, something is something, right? You can't get everything you want. So now we finally got and then I'll get to that, right? So then now we finally got a price for the building, which we've been asking for months. On a Thursday, 4:57 p.m., the email goes out. We're supposed to meet on Monday and have a conversation. And I said, I can't have an intelligent conversation. And then they said they give us 30 days. And it's like, who can do this in 30 days? Like, I'm not a real estate professional. I don't have 30, whatever money that they want under my bed. I got to go find this. I got to go talk to people. I got to, so like, it's ridiculous. So the timeline is very important to just establish, and give people, because a feasible timeline where they can, do these things. And then the other thing is, when I put that in, I didn't think it would be so controversial because we're just asking, let me match the offer. If you get an offer, let us match it, right? That makes sense. You're still getting the same amount of money. What do you care where it's coming from? And it blew my mind that it would be such a problem. And then the New Economy Project had a national presentation with some of the lawmakers in San Francisco and all that, which was incredible. I can't remember her name, and I'm upset with myself because she's a rock star. She should have statues with her, right? So anyway, she and the other person that was on there, and I was asking them, like, who's the opposition? Like, what's the problem? And it really just came down to like, it's just ideological. Like, they just don't want tenants to win. Like, it breaks, I guess, their system, that they're in command. And I even hate the word landlord. It goes back to the feudal system. It goes into that. Like, we control things, and God forbid the tenants get some kind of empowerment, some kind of, word in on the whole process. You're not supposed to, go back to where you come from. You're a peasant. Don't meddle in these affairs. I that's the only reasoning, because there's no other reasoning. Anyway, I had to get that off my chest. Sorry, guys. I don't want to monopolize, but I'm living through this. So this is very, like, I'm actively living through it. Like, I just had the meeting last night where Erica Buckley, who I'll keep saying her name because she used to work at UHAB, and now she's on the other side of the table. And yeah, so I'm living through this.
Yeah, thanks, John. And I know that, you are going through an incredibly difficult fight in your own building and doing a phenomenal job. I'm still blown away that you were able to get that language into an agreement in, negotiating what happens to your building, which I think is also to say that TOPA, we are really hoping that this adds to, it's a tactic, it's another tool in our organizing fight. And there are ways that we can do it in a really prescribed way, passing the policy and making sure that it works as a right for all tenants. And there are also things that folks are doing right now in their building organizing, like John is, like adding, language into legal agreements over sort of what happens for the future of a building. Tenants that are working on campaigns that started out as campaigns for repairs and have turned into demands to, we want to buy the building. The tenants want to take control. And I think all of these things, work together in the same universe to create a really strong base for these policies and more tenant control. The other thing that I want to say in response to that is that I think that timeline piece really underscores the need for funding. And I think that's why we're making such a big push for funding. We know that the cards are really stacked against tenants in the ability to, take land off the market and to really be able to take control over their homes. And having, the state fund for TOPA would create an acquisition fund that is dedicated for TOPA sales. So, say you're in a situation where you've just been assigned your TOPA rights and tenants come together and they start to organize, there's an immediate and direct connection that says there is already a fund out there that is specifically for your buildings to be able to expedite this process and to be able to move forward. And I think that those connections, having speedy access to capital and the ability to make those things sort of move on a relatively short timescale, because the timelines, we want them to be generous, but they're still not that long, is really huge to be able to make sure that tenants can actually use this. That fund is really modeled after something that's been working in DC and that they implemented in, I think, 2018 or 2019, after many, many years of working with this policy, and have found that it's been incredibly effective in making sure that tenants really are able to exercise their rights, especially in high-priced communities where otherwise that market is going to move way, way too fast, or that price is going to be incredibly unaffordable for tenants on their own.
What kind of timeline do they have?
They have a very similar timeline to the timeline that's included here. There are some differences based on the sort of units in buildings. I'm happy to send around a little bit more specifics on sort of DC's TOPA law and a comparison. What we've sort of taken for the New York State proposal is a little bit of sort of an overlay with DC as like a background, and including some of the slightly more progressive policies that have been implemented in San Francisco. So slightly longer timelines, slightly more generous accommodations for, tenants to participate, the ability to extend in some of that timeline, especially when tenants are already working towards financing. And so, DC's law is a bit older and has, been amended and updated over time, but is a little bit less generous than what's in our timelines. Alex.
I imagine you have to build those relationships.
Someone's at my door, so somebody else can go.
Okay. I imagine you have to build those relationships pretty beforehand too, so you can process it more efficiently, right? I mean, that's a very tight timeline either way. I mean, people don't close on buildings for sometimes a year.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've been through that myself. My background is in doing affordable housing development specifically to HDFC co-ops. And we were able to help a group of tenants in the Bronx in 2022 purchase their building, and they're in the process of converting to an HDFC co-op. This was sort of the first deal that we saw happen where tenants were able to really proactively insert themselves into the sale and use the leverage that they had created through their organizing to, effectively force a sale with their landlord. There's a group in East New York, the East New York CLT just purchased a building last week through a very similar sort of method and tactic using that tenant power. But these things take time. And I think the other thing that's important on the timelines is that there is room for extension. And so especially once you're in sort of like the financing period, there are many different junctures at which you can sort of extend, and it becomes what's permissible by the law and then sort of what's agreed to by both parties, the seller and the buyer. And so, you know, that flexibility I think is also really important.
Did Cooper
Alex, you're
Square
back.
lay this foundation?
Sorry, say that again,
Did
John?
Cooper Square lay a foundation for this, right? Yeah.
Yeah, it's like the Cooper Square Community Land Trust.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, they were
50
one of the first community land trusts in New York City, and definitely laid a foundation, and that they really have stuck to the idea that land and housing should be off of the speculative market. And we've seen them be able to really embody community control of our homes and keep so many units and commercial spaces deeply and permanently affordable.
We're talking about this tonight, you know. Are you guys
Oh,
coming?
right, yeah.
You guys coming?
I'm not able to make it, but you all are going to watch Rabble Rousers, right? Or
No, it's a forum. Rabble Rousers
Oh,
VR.
I
It
think
was
John's already seen Rebel Rousers.
yeah.
But
It's good for
I'm so sorry about someone was at my door, but
Yeah.
I was hoping, Arielle, would you be able to bring back slide 8? Because I have a question about one of the points.
Yeah, sure.
But I wanted to say, while you bring that up, the Monday morning rally at 11 a.m. at City Hall is gonna be the Progressive Caucus of the New York City Council, which is like, I think, 18 council members and Brad Lander. And the name of the initiative or push is called Housing Now and Housing for Generations. So not very catchy. I'm calling it HINHIG unless somebody tells me not to. But yeah, thank you for bringing this slide back up, Arielle. So number 4 seems to me, because I'm so green to this, so I really don't know, but it just seemed to me that number 4, the tenants and qualified purchasers still have a right of refusal. That seems to me to be the most effective tool. I was going to say weapon, but it's too early in the day for violence. Just kidding. But I just feel like it's the most compelling tool in the toolbox. Is that a fair thing to think?
I think so. And actually, in our COPA bill, so the New York City bill, right now there is no right of first refusal. So it's only the right of the opportunity to purchase for community groups. And we actually delayed, last year, City Council kind of came to us and told us, like, hey, we could possibly move this bill forward. Actually, this was 2 years ago. And we said, no, we don't want to move the bill forward unless it has the right of first refusal. Because we would agree, like, without that piece, there's not a lot of teeth. The owner can give a notice to, particularly in COPA, to community groups, to CLTs. That's great, but they can just immediately reject them and then take it to the open market. And we think that enforcement of, let's come back and really negotiate with the tenants, with community groups, that is like a really important piece for sure.
Yeah, that would waste a lot of time. Really, I mean, if you didn't have that was, yeah, that's definitely needed.
I mean, landlords are going to find a loophole. I'd never seen such a, they're going to find some way to try. So you got to try to cover all these little bases, because I can see where they might have one of their real estate friends give a fake offer almost. and then try to drive up right. But you know, what can you do? You just got to amend it once it's passed and fix little things that you see that they're exploiting or whatever. And it's just, you know, it's a cat and mouse game almost.
Yeah, and I think that's why we are really trying to drill down on some of these points about what is really important to keep in a TOPA bill to actually make it usable and to make it really powerful for tenants, that, you know, it's a right that as many buildings as possible are eligible, that we preserve that timeline, and that tenants have access to funding. All of those things, you know, without any one of those pieces, the bill is a lot less powerful. And so we know that we're going to have to fight all the way through this process to make sure that these things are included. And also that, you know, we're responding to the dynamics at play. I'm sure that folks are going to try to find loopholes, and we're just going to have to respond. The other thing here, I think, is that, you know, all of these policies, especially TOPA and COPA, work best when tenants are already organized or can use this as a base for really strong tenant organizing. And so, you know, there's leverage and pressure not only through what's in the bill, but also through the tenant's ability to disrupt, you know, their landlord's income, to, you know, stretch out a timeline, to initiate legal where there are, you know, serious repair issues. All of those things that make tenant organizing really strong in New York City can only build and make a TOPA or a COPA fight more powerful.
Yeah.
I want to
It's a
give
bit
other
like
people a
Cyprus
chance
now.
to ask a question. I do have one more, but I'll wait to the last minute because I
Oh,
feel
go
like
ahead.
I'm asking all these questions.
It's okay.
Yeah, I
Nobody
see
else-
that we're at 11, and I think that that's our time for today. I'm happy to stay on for 1 or 2 more minutes if there's one last thing, but just want to reiterate what Elise mentioned and put in the chat, to endorse the Community Land Act, which includes COPA, to send a message to your council member for support, and to sign on to TOPA at the state level, and send a memo of support from your organization. We'll also make sure we get this around to you, John, so you can send them out to the group. We would really appreciate it. So
No, I'd
thanks,
be happy to.
everybody.
Yeah,
I,
be happy to. I'll certainly post it, and I'll certainly support it and pass it around, and probably, and I have to see where my, you know, the things that I have my task list to see how much I can get involved. But right to council, I've been going to their meetings except for doing these forums. These forums have really consumed me right now. And it's the last one is tonight, so I'll certainly have a little bit more time. Have you been in touch with Right to Council? They're doing a lot of. I thought you would. I know.
Yeah. And, you know, I think it's a really good example of the way that all of these policies work together to create a much stronger base for tenants, that in some ways, you know, a right to a lawyer, especially statewide for eviction protection, is also a right to organize, to know that you have defense during the court process. TOPA is also a right to organize around the sale process. All of these things, I think, build those tools in our arsenal, to be able to, you know, give tenants more control over their land and their homes.
Yeah.
I think right to council too is also a great example that the funding has to be there from the beginning. That you
Yeah.
have to get the funding, because without the funding, you know, it's a law, but it doesn't, you know.
And housing conservation coordinators,
muted.
you guys are connected?
Yes,
Arielle?
yes, we are.
Yeah.
I also just want to do a quick response to Deborah's question in the chat. TIL buildings are not eligible for TOPA because they are already city owned. And so, you know, the processes under TIL are that, you know, those buildings get disposed of to the tenants through either, you know, the TIL program as it exists, or these days, more likely ANCP, the Affordable Neighborhood Cooperative Program, or some permutation of it. I'm happy to talk more about that, but city-owned buildings are not eligible for TOPA or COPA.
And I saw Harvey had a question.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I have a question. Just a general observation. Just this is rather, the subject is new. But one thing is purchasing buildings. I mean, why, when prices of real estate are at the highest, it's, you know, why have we waited until the building owners don't have the greatest advantage of making the greatest profit. That's number one. Number two is building owners may own several buildings. They have management companies. There's an efficiency of scale. If someone wants to buy a building with 30 units, you have to organize management or hire a management company, and you have to pay for that. And you may not get the right management company. They don't have experience with your building, and they may not have the experience that you need, and those costs are an unknown. So, yeah, it seems like this program would go ahead because some owners want to say, I want to get rid of that building, and they may know some hidden problems with the building that the tenants don't know, going back in the history of the deeds. And of course, all that research can be done, and then you can decide not to buy the building. But it seems to me that, where real estate prices are so high, we're trying to purchase something at an inflated price. And to me, from a owner's point of view, I always buy low and sell high. I never buy high and hope I can, come out clean, because I won't. The prices can go down. So as an architect, I do get involved in development issues, and I consult with developers on and owners of property how to develop their property. But buying high is not a good solution.
Yeah, thanks, Harvey. And I think, your comment speaks to the fact that our homes, which we know, a lot of these homes, especially rent stabilized buildings, are simply not worth the amount of money that they're selling for on the market, because those prices are wildly inflated compared to building conditions that tenants are living through. But we've also seen, since the HSTPA passed in 2019 and tightened the rent laws, and since, Signature Bank's failure, that there's a dip in the sort of prices and certainly the market for rent stabilized buildings. And that is a huge opening. That's an opening we haven't seen in many, many years. And I think that, that's something that's really worthwhile to take advantage of. So, we're initiating this, and we're hoping to pass this in a really high priced market. But TOPA was implemented in Washington, D.C. during a time when people were fleeing the city, and was really attempted as a way to keep sort of the middle class in the city. And, we found that this policy really works in both scenarios. We're not only passing this for this moment, we're passing this for, the future of New York City and state and whatever might come with that. And I think it's up to the tenants and to their partners at the time that a sale comes through to really see what's possible and make, a good and informed decision about the future of their building. Things mean, very different when you're seeing them through profit and what's profitable to sort of buy and sell, versus when this is your home for the long term and, you're not going anywhere. That's your retirement strategy. That's everything. So I think the dynamics at play are a little different. And also, I work at UHAB. We support limited equity cooperatives. The average size of an HDFC co-op in the city is 20 units. A lot of them are still self-managed. And they've found really good and exciting ways to sort of pool resources across buildings and to keep those costs down, even in times when prices of maintenance are really, really high for buildings. And, we're drawing off of all those resources and support to make sure that, no one's being left at the door once you, convert your building into, a limited equity cooperative or, put it onto a CLT. The point is that there's more support and technical assistance all the way through that building's lifetime to make sure that they manage, their managers, their maintenance fees, their, prices through the long history of their building. That's the preservation work. So I'm glad you mentioned that.
Cool. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, this is great, Arielle. This is great, Elise. Really. We're going to be talking a little bit about this at our forum tonight. Sam Stein and Rob Robinson and Sam Turvey. We're going to talk about the landscape, the transportation system. We're trying to get the city to look at building a different way. Of course, that's going to be tough, but the more we gather together with things like this, with other options, the better. Because what they're doing is they're drilling down on old policies and standard operating procedures that's going to really crush this city. And what you're offering is what we should be thinking about, what we should be doing. We should be building for the people. And I appreciate this.
Can I get the final send off for Arielle and Elise? Because I feel they have to go. But thanks to Arielle and Elise. This has hands down been my favorite MSCC. So it goes without saying. I hope to see you back because we're going to invite you back. Thank you so much, you guys.
Thank you so much for having us.
Are you
and maybe we'll see you on Monday at the press conference.
Yeah, thanks for having us. Great to see you. And yeah, we hope we'll see more of everybody here. Take care.
Yeah, I want you to expound on social housing a little bit, but that might take a few minutes, so maybe.
It's a good question for Sam tonight.
Yes.
I'm sorry?
It's a good question for Sam Stein tonight.
Sam Stein.
Yeah. All right, very good. Let's see. Let's look at our agenda. I think we usually do a little public issues. Anybody here have any public issues? Nobody? Anything I'm missing? Anybody have something they desperately want to talk about? John, you came here, I guess, to hear about this. How'd you find this? Tell me. You're muted, John. You're muted.
Actually, Alex, because Alex knows what I've been going through with the building, and how passionate I am about TOPA. Just not even just for us, because like I said, it's going to be too late for us. But just for the future of New York, and so people don't have to go through what I'm going through and what we've been through in the last 15 years, and just having this gloom over you. That the anxiety of where am I going, what am I doing, what's happening, right? People shouldn't have to live like this, and that I think that's.
Is it rent control?
No. Well, it's under rent control as long as it was under the J51. You know how that works, and then
right,
it's rent stabilized, and then it loses it, and then they go to that's what people don't realize. All these housing connect and all these apartments, okay, they sound great, and they're not even affordable at this point. Because you got to be making incomes of 100 and something to 300. I seen as high as 300. Which, if you make $300,000 a year and you need an affordable apartment, then I don't know what world I'm living in. Because that's just so. But so even those people though, they're getting a nice shiny new apartment. Okay, but for 15 years come and go. And it's come quicker than you think. So if if you had a child or something in there, they're not even adults yet, and now you're forced out into the market, into the market, and everything is just it's crazy. So it's all these things. I'm just an advocate and fighting for just like we had a good cause rally just last week or the week before, which Alex was nice enough to come to, and I think that's an important part. And I think all of these little things together we can make New York livable again, because it's
we have to synergize a little tighter, I think. Bring people. Some of us are doing it a little bit better than others, and of course, but it's really hard. There's a lot of causes they intersect. I agree with you. There's got to be a communication system, I think, and we have to synergize a little better, I think, because housing conservation, what WESNA, tenants and neighbors, all this thing is really about our rights and staying in our homes, and in NYCHA even, we kind of let NYCHA fall by the wayside, and now people are starting to realize I'm trying to coalesce them together with the other groups, and it's very important, because what we're battling here is the developer and the financial system. They're going to finance our lives out of the city is what they're doing. They're going to own everything, and that's what they're after. They want to strip away housing in Penn area. They try to hook up these financial gimmicks with infrastructure. They want to own the infrastructure. It's we haven't seen the worst of it by no means.
Oh no. We have,
It's just
private equity. Wall Street is coming in now. It's about to get. I was reading, right, because this housing justice takes different forms in different places. How in North Carolina, I think like 40% of single homes, it was some ridiculous number. I think it was in one particular town,
50
is
something.
owned by private equity companies and all of that. So it's getting to the point where those people there, it's destabilizing the whole thing. Now, instead of having long-term owners, they have, short-term renters that don't really build community ties. It's just, so it's a big fight. We're doing our part here, but it's huge. It's bigger than us.
I'm on Zoom, so I can't talk.
Come to our forum tonight. I think you'll
You can't. You told me you
Just
can't,
another.
right?
I'm sorry.
I just want to add something.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. Sure.
Yeah, just to say, I mean, I live in New Jersey, a suburb of West Orange suburb, and there's something, as we know, is called smart growth, and there's a tremendous, unbelievable amount of apartment construction going on around the train station areas in every town. Unbelievable amount, and that's what's happening is a flight out of New York into more affordable units in New Jersey. I don't know if what's happening in Westchester or Long Island, and people will take mass transit. It's a half an hour in to the city if you must go in to work or if that's where your job is. So it's not as though people are homeless. There are other options, and even though these apartments are getting rather pricey in New Jersey, they're very, very decent new units, and they're building them at unprecedented volume. I've never seen as much construction. And the typical formula is a concrete platform with parking underneath and 5 stories of wood construction for 200 units. And they're going up. It's just like I don't know how to describe it. Hotcakes, whatever. It's going up. And so New York has 2 levels. You can either be a wealthy resident or you can try to find something in Niger. There's nothing in between. Now, my daughter lives in a co-op in Manhattan, which she has for 15 years. And, she can afford it because she's an executive in a company. But other than that, and she's single, but and she has a one bedroom. And that one bedroom is $900,000. So no one, not many middle class people can afford it. And families are definitely not able to afford to live in Manhattan. And the demographics show that there are not many families. The typical family is 1 or 2 people, or a single mom with 1 child. And there are not many families living in Manhattan. So I don't know. It's kind of a self-correcting situation. You try to solve something in Manhattan, that's already the marketplace is solving it in some way. And to stay and fight for what you want in your own place is sometimes you'd rather switch than fight. You'd rather go with the flow and see where your opportunities are if they're not where you're living right now. And a lot of the housing in Manhattan is aging. It's falling down. It's stopped being maintained and is beyond its life. Who wants to live behind a scaffolding that's sitting there for 5-10 years and no one's doing the repairs? So the reality is, this is some of the reality that I see.
Yeah. Well, they certainly allow these buildings to dilapidate. It's amazing that they let their buildings go in disrepair just to move people out. They allow their buildings that they pay for just to to get people out of the building. People buy. This is what they like. For instance, this building. His father had the building, had lots of little properties, tenement buildings. This area used to be a lot of tenement buildings, and I saw them, especially in 2008 when Bloomberg did his thing with the zoning. These hotels came in and just grew up like weeds, and they crushed a lot of tenement buildings. Well, this particular fellow, he likes to hang on to property. He's an old school Italian fellow. So he's getting older and passes to his son. And his son he was kind of awful, but he would push comes to shove, he'll fix it, he'll keep it up. He did have some pride in the building. His son is doing everything he can to move people out, bringing people in here to cause trouble with people, make a lot of noise, and not doing the repairs like he should. And there's certain things that he's got to do, with the heating and that sort of thing. You can call and then you'll get immediate response. But when it comes to a lot of things, it's a process. And he's tried to evict me a couple of times, and so I brought in the HPD, DHCR lawyers and so forth, and made him paint the hallways, fix things up, fix my apartment up. And I still, we're still in a very contentious battle. But here's a guy that allowed this building and this is going on for 20 years, when he took over from his father. This sounds interesting and ripe for maybe a tenant takeover. I don't know. I think sometimes they expect a lot of money for their properties, and they have a somewhat of cash flow. And their idea is to strip away the rent-controlled apartments and bring them up. But they bought it. Here's my point, though, my end point. They bought it with a certain amount of profit margins. Okay, they bought homes. These are homes for people. These aren't these to take this and look as investment property, and to do what most investors do, trying to increase their profits at the expense of everything and anyone around them, is just wrong. They've invested in people's homes. And that's where their logic, and that's where the capitalist system drives people. So it's a shame because it hurts people. I've been here for over 30 years, 36 years. Some of us been here. I've seen people pass away that been living here for a long time. And that's I think what the city needs to be about. That's what homes are about, communities and so forth. We don't have a community here. So I think it's very important we rethink that, rethink affordability. I love the idea, what people speak of affordability, but some people don't have any idea what affordability is. So I'll leave it at that. John, you have the last word.
Yeah, I just wanted to say the financing, there's a lot of financing in there now. I'm learning, because in the beginning I said there's no way we're going to be able to buy this. Like, this is a 70-unit building in a what became now a desirable area. It wasn't when we first moved in. We helped build this community to what it is now and to force us out now. But anyway, I thought this is unreachable. It's infeasible. It's not feasible. It's just. But there is a lot of, and if you work with UHAB and all of that, there's ways and then so don't get discouraged. And if you think that that's somewhere where you guys should pursue, look into it. Really look into it without thinking about that, because they work it out somehow. And that's what I'm learning now as I'm going through this. And as far as what Harvey said, right? People become incredibly resourceful once they own. Like, I'm ready to paint my hallways in the building. I'm ready to do whatever I have to do, And once you get people, once you own, because right now, what's your incentive to right now go out and paint the lobby of your building? You have none. You're not going to help his, bottom line, and he's cheating you anyway, But if it's yours, if you have some, so look back to the history in the 70s, how they took over vacant buildings and they fixed them up themselves and all of that. Once you give people some kind of ownership, some connection to it, you're gonna see how the people of power, like people have power, and people are just, I don't know. I hope I made sense.
No, it does. But that's the people in power position, they want the property. They want to own everything from digital to, I mean, look what they're doing. It's such an immoral conditions where, our nation is right now. I mean, you can just the funding of these wars, it's just, anyway, I won't get into that, but anyway, I appreciate everybody being here. Look forward to seeing you next month. And then remember the forums tonight, 6 p.m. You can either Zoom. Everybody's got the notice. Everybody's got the. I put the Eventbrite link into the chat room. And you can always email me if you need any more information. I'll put my email. And yeah, Alex just put it in again.
Have a good afternoon. I'm leaving.
Yeah, it's been a really good series. It's been a good conversation. Hope I see some of you guys there. I think we're down to 5 people. I think it's time to close this meeting. About 24 minutes ago, actually. But anyway, appreciate you being here. I'm going to close this down.